Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 84. As always, I'm going to start us off with a bit of a tune, and this one is from a channel I discovered mainly because Semiagog mentioned him. An Aussie bloke called Chris Gard, who's got some good music and other content on his channel. Please go and check him out.
I went into a public house to get a pint of beer. The publican he up and says we serve no red coat here. The girls behind the bar they laughed and giggled fit to die. I out into the street again and to myself says I, oh, it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy go away. But it's thank you Mr. Atkins when the man begins to play. When the man begins to play, my boys, the man begins to play. Oh, it's thank you Mr. Atkins when the man begins to play. I went into a theatre as sober as could be. They gave a drunk civilian room that hadn't had none for me. They sent me to the gallery around the music halls. But when it comes to fighting, Lord, they'll push me in the stalls. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy right outside. With a special train for acting when the troopers on the tide. When the troopers on the tide, my boys, the troopers on the tide. Oh, a special train for acting when the troopers on the tide. You're speaking of mocha uniforms, the card you in your sleeve is cheaper than the uniforms, and by Christ they're cheap. And hustling drunken sailors when they're going large a bit is a muchly better business than parading in full kit. Then it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy how's your soul? But it's secret night of heroes when the drums begin to roll. When the drums begin to roll, my boys, the drums begin to roll. Oh, I think the night of heroes when the drums begin to roll. We aren't nothing but heroes, well that much is true. But single men in power, it's remarkable that you. And if sometimes our conduct isn't for your fancy pains, why single men in barracks don't grow into foster saints. Well, it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy go behind. But it's pleased to walk in concert when there's trouble in the wine. Well, there's trouble in the wine, my boy, there's trouble in the wine. Oh, it's pleased to walk in concert when there's trouble in the wine. You talk a better food for us in schools and for all. We'll wait for extra ration if you treat us rational. Don't mess about the cookery slops to prove it to our face. The widow's uniform is not the soldier man's disgrace. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and chucking out the brute. But it's savior of his country when the guns begin to shoot. And it's Tommy this and Tommy that and anything you please. And Tommy ain't the blue and all you bet that Tommy sees.
Okay, that was Tommy, which obviously is from the Rudyard Kipling poem written in the 1890s, and an original arrangement and song by Chris Gard. Please go and check his channel out. Don't know how you're going today, guys. I don't have any guests at the moment. My co-host Ammon is out having fun. How dare he? So since I don't have any guests, I'm probably just going to take questions from the chat and this kind of stuff. See how we go from there. I will bring up, first of all, most people will have noticed that Salman Rushdie got attacked the other day in America somewhere by, so far as I can see, another Islamic guy. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I don't think I would have very much in common with Salman Rushdie, who strikes me as a lefty liberal in all respects. And the same lefty liberals who would be mates with Salman Rushdie have invited loads of these Islamist types into our nations. And no one else asked for them to do this. So, you know, it's kind of these people who agree with Salman Rushdie have caused the problem, because they've invited all these bloody people who don't belong in Western nations into Western nations. So that's my view on that one. And obviously, I will say, for Susan's benefit, that this channel does not ever support violence or anything illegal whatsoever. We don't support violence against anyone. We are a very peaceful lot here on this channel. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of a self-inflicted problem, isn't it? But when I say self-inflicted, not by the ordinary people of Western nations, but by our so-called leaders, who in many respects strike me as traitors these days. Can't think of a better description of them than that, to be honest. I mean, I believe Liz Truss, the leading candidate for the Conservative Party leadership, was asked about ending mass immigration at one of her hustings meetings, and she said, "Oh no, we need the skills," which is absolute bullshit, of course, but there we go, because the vast majority of the third world immigrants who arrive in Britain in such huge numbers every year have no skills whatsoever. So, you know. But there we are. So, guys, if you have any questions, please stick them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them, providing, of course, they are the sort of questions one is allowed to answer on YouTube, which is not a free speech platform. I would also say, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on content. We do have extra streams coming up. In fact, I'll be putting one up after the end of this stream for one that's coming up later in the month, which is part 2 of the stream I did with Horace on Britain, the Royal Navy, Winston Churchill, and all that sort of stuff. And we may end up even doing a part 3 of that one, depending how we go next time. So that'll be coming up, I think, on the 25th of August. So do subscribe and you will get that, I dare say. It's typical. I had more people waiting for this stream than any other stream I think I've ever done, and they don't have one guest. And I have a Discord, which is specifically for getting guests on this stream. And I'll be quite honest with you, chaps, it was easier to get soldiers to stand up with AKs firing at them and advance on the enemy than it was to get people to come on the stream. And all this stream is chatting. So, you know, it's kind of like pub chat, if you like. Hopefully a little bit more intelligent than that, but not very much. So, yeah. So if you've got questions in the chat, anything, pretty much, I will try and answer them. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short stream. So, I didn't bother doing my usual looking at the Bias Brainwashing Corporation today because I just couldn't bring myself to face it. Because it's always so depressing and it's always the same stuff. It's always immigrants this and immigrants that and feminists this and feminists that and LGBTQ people this and LGBTQ people that, and like almost nothing about ordinary average people. Certainly all the ordinary average Anglo-Celtic people, of course. What did Steve say in the chat there? Get your salt pork and biscuit rations ready. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Even when I was in the army in the 1980s, we still had hard biscuits, which were pretty similar to those, pretty similar to the sorts of biscuits they gave British soldiers in the 1890s and 100 years before that, indeed. So, yeah. In fact, I was watching a World War II movie the other day, and the chaps put cap comforters on, which are kind of little woolly hat-type things, and we were still issued those in the 1980s as well. Don't think I ever wore one, but we certainly issued them. Lee Ham in the chat, biscuits brown, yes, those very things. They were quite similar to the standard kind of hard British Army biscuit that was used by the British Army and by the Royal Navy going back to sort of Wellington and Nelson's day. So, yes, biscuits brown indeed. Actually, I once got given a huge box of those by the company that makes them when I was running an expedition in South Africa. And that was one of the things I got given by companies. Of course, I had to, like, mention the company. But, yeah. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. How can you watch World War II movies knowing what we know now? Because Tuesday, FA Tuesday, I distinguish between the men who fought, be it in the Royal Navy, the British Army, or the Royal Air Force, or the Royal Marines. I distinguish between the men who fought and the politicians who were running the war. That's how I can watch World War II movies. Like, I can watch movies about the British Army in Afghanistan recently, of which there's only one, of course, as far as I know. Doesn't mean I think we should have been in Afghanistan, but I can appreciate the bravery of the guys who were there. They're not the same thing. I mean, you can't confuse the gallantry of ordinary soldiers or sailors or airmen with what politicians were doing, which is what I think you're confusing there. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. Minoan, where are we? Tell us what you think about China's capability what you think China's capability is for their blue navy in opposition to Japan and then the USA. I think the Chinese navy is extremely strong close to China. It's much less strong away from China. I think how well their hypersonic missiles, etc., will perform remains to be seen. Whether we want to find that out or not is a different matter, of course. One thing I do think will happen is that an awful lot of Chinese warships will go boom all of a sudden from American and probably eventually British SSN hunter-killer nuclear submarines. I think a lot of Chinese warships will go boom in that regard if anything kicks off over Taiwan. And I'm not sure I'm sure the Chinese have thought about that, but I think that is one major strength that the Western Navy still have, that our submarines are a lot better than Chinese submarines. I mean, Chinese submarines are by and large slightly behind the Russians, and Russian submarines are also behind ours. So, in fact, I think recently RAF maritime patrol aircraft found a Russian submarine off Norway. So, I mean, not that I think Russian submarines are much of a threat to Britain, unless Britain is stupid enough to make them so. But I'm sort of rather more sympathetic to Russia than I am to China, as people who listen to this stream will know. So, hang on, someone in my Discord is telling me it's Derry Day. Come on, Duke. Yes, okay, it's Derry Day. Congratulations to the apprentice boys of Derry. No problem. So there we go. Again, something I have to be very careful talking about on YouTube, because YouTube is not a free speech platform in any way, shape, or form. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. World War II movies are quite paused. I don't know. I think it depends. To be honest, I think there's quite a lot. I mean, I tend to like stiff upper lip British war dramas from the 1950s and so on, and most of those are not really very paused, I don't think. I don't find them very paused. I was watching one the other day. What's it called? Sea of Sand, which is about the Long Range Desert Group. It's not paused. It's got nothing to do with politics whatsoever. It's just a little group of blokes trying to break into an enemy airfield and blow it up. It's not paused. The Germans are not particularly stupid in it. Most of the Brits get killed, so it's not particularly paused really. Steve in the chat says, "Well, what am I doing here?" Okay, Steve in the chat says, what does he say? The thing about those missiles is that we have to assume they're capable. That by itself will keep carriers back. Yeah, well, I mean, but I don't get where people think that aircraft carriers are going to be operating in the Taiwan Strait. They're not. I mean, I don't think anyone is stupid enough that they're going to try and operate a giant aircraft carrier in the Taiwan Strait. Any carriers would be operating on the far side of Taiwan, over the other side of a load of mountains. So, they wouldn't be operating in the Taiwan Strait. I think the idea that they would is crazy, frankly. Although, let me stress, I hope that there is no war over Taiwan. I'd like, because I don't know, when were we speaking about this? Last week? Week before? We've certainly spoken about it on this channel. Whoever won in a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, it wouldn't make any difference because both sides would lose a lot of men and good ships. So, Lee Ham in the chat. Yes, I totally agree with this. What he says there. What do I do here to do this? Sorry. Remember. Lee Ham in the chat says the Dam Busters. Is the Dam Busters raid film paused? Guy Gibson's dog didn't have a very paused name. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And in fact, I believe when they were talking about Peter Jackson, I believe, the bloke who made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, wants to make a remake of the Dam Busters movie. And he was going to change the name to Dog, which I didn't agree with at all. But I mean, look at the state of Hollywood and most of the mainstream media these days, and they couldn't keep the name of the dog at all. But yeah, exactly. There aren't many World War II or World War I movies that don't portray the Germans like Sergeant Schultz or Colonel Klink, says Tuesday, FA Tuesday. Mate, you're watching too many American movies and not enough British ones, I would say. Look, I've seen loads of American World War II movies, and I can't say I'm an enormous fan of many of them. There are some good ones, but I'm not an enormous fan of a lot of them. But you'll find most British and like Aussie World War II movies are a lot more balanced than that on the whole. So yeah, go and check. Like I said, go and check out some British World War II films. Stuff like Battle of the River Plate, Sink the Bismarck, Sea of Sand, which is one I just mentioned. The original Dunkirk movie from 1959 or something, which is a much better film than the Nolan one, by the way. It's a much better film and much more accurate as well. Go and check those out, and you won't find the Germans being portrayed as stupid in those films at all, to be honest with you. Nudge Unit says Band of Brothers isn't too bad. Yeah, Band of Brothers doesn't particularly portray the Germans as being stupid, I suppose. Not particularly. But you see, the dude who wrote the book that Band of Brothers is based on, he also wrote one about the British paras who landed on the other side of the Allies at Normandy. And that never got turned into a TV show, of course, because Brits don't basically make war movies anymore because most, like 99.9% of British filmmakers are extreme lefty, feminist, LGBTQ types, and they're not interested in celebrating anything about British history. As I said earlier, there's only one British film about all the years the British Army was in Afghanistan, and the only reason that got made, it's called Tajaki, I think. The only reason it got made is because there's no enemy in it. They just find themselves in an old Soviet minefield. Had it been actually fighting anyone, the lefty British filmmakers would never have made it. Guaranteed. So, there you go. I don't know why that's not working. That must be a reason. Oh, well. So yeah, I don't know, guys. Like I said, No guests this evening. I've got 20 people watching. And like I said, this is kind of a bit of a Q&A. So if you guys want to ask me some questions, I shall do my best to answer them. Adam in the chat is saying, Bridge Too Far and Bridge Over the River Kwai good. I don't really like either of those movies, to be honest with you. Bridge Over the River Kwai is about British prisoners of the Japanese, and the British commander in it is a bit loopy until right at the end. And The Bridge Too Far is very much told from the American point of view, and is not accurate because the people who delayed the arrival of the Allied armour in Arnhem itself were actually the second lot of Americans who landed, who didn't capture the bridge they were supposed to capture because the American general in charge thought there were 1,000 German tanks in a nearby wood. And I don't think there were, well, there weren't 1,000 German tanks in the whole of Western Europe in 1944, so in September 1944. Steve said there's a film called The Patrol about a British unit in Afghanistan. I think I might have heard about that, but it's a very low budget deal, isn't it? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but yeah. Nudge Unit. Anyone watch that German series Generation War? Yes, I saw that. I thought it was all right. It was okay. I mean, you know, bloody the boat, Das Boot is an excellent German World War II thing. Although I would say, if you want to get both sides of the Battle of the Atlantic, if you're going to watch Das Boot, which is a great film, you then need to go and watch The Cruel Sea, which gives it to you from the side of the British corvettes and frigates that were trying to defend the convoys, which is an equally good film. What am I looking at here? Would you be okay doing a stream with Wendy Wu from England first and talk about England in the boomer olden days? I don't know who Wendy Wu is. I don't know what England first is, but intrinsically, not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily be against it. Like I said, I don't know who Wendy Wu is, and I don't know what England first is either. But no particular reason I wouldn't be against it. I would be against it, I should say. No name in the chat wants to know, what do you think the FBI raid on Trump could be a move to open hostilities left and right in the States? I think they're just trying to put him off. The Democrats and the deep state in America are just trying to put him off running the next US election as president. That's what I think it's about. And the FBI and all of the alphabet agencies in America seem to have been extremely politicized under Senile Joe. And whoever is running Senile Joe, because whoever's running America, it isn't Joe Biden. You know. So, you know. Tuesday, FA Tuesday, says, I wouldn't trust an English nationalist with the name Wu. Yes, well, I see what you're saying. But do they mean Wu as in, you know, Wu, or do they mean Wu as in an Oriental name? I'm not sure. I've never heard of this person. So. JB says she's a legend. You'll like her. Fine. I mean, what? I'm on Minds, 99 Iron Duke on Minds. So you can get hold of me on there if you'd like to. Sorry, not Minds. Gab. I'm on Gab, 99 Iron Duke. I am on Minds. I think I'm Iron Duke 99 on Minds. The FBI raid backfired. Yeah, they didn't find anything, did they? Surprise, surprise. I think it was mainly just harassment. You know. I wouldn't put anything past the deep state and the Democratic government in America at the moment, to be honest with you. Not that I'm saying the British government's any better, because I don't think they are. So, you know. Manon, what are you saying here? Oh, hang on, let me do Adam first. Not a World War II film, but Ungentleman the Act is a good film. Yeah, it's really not a war film, though. It's more a politics film, to be honest. There's a little bit of the opening Argentine invasion shown on it, but it's mostly a political film. But yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if the Americans had done the Falklands invasion, they would have made at least half a dozen films about it by now, and the Brits haven't made one. And as I said, it's because British filmmakers are so invariably left-wing that they just won't celebrate anything like that. No chance whatsoever. They're just anti-British, really. So then Manoan was asking, I've never known a soldier who fought a war to like films about war. Why? I've never known a soldier who fought to like films about war. Why? Because most of them are crap, mate. That's why. The vast majority of war movies are very, very inaccurate. They just are. It's like, because for one thing, like a lot of modern war, and this would go right back to World War One, in fact, probably even to the Anglo-Boer War, there's nothing to see most of the time. All right, sometimes there's a tank or something, or, but everyone's taking cover. So if a filmmaker is going to make a movie about wars, they have to do stuff which is not realistic, because otherwise people will probably be poor chillers. People sitting behind a wall and occasionally taking a pot shot at the enemy might not be that entertaining. I don't know. I'm guessing that's what it is. Anyway. But yeah, they're not terribly accurate, most of them. This is why most of the best British World War II films are either about the Royal Navy or the RAF, or stuff like the Long Range Desert Group and what have you. They're not, generally speaking, about big battles like El Alamein or Normandy, because those things are almost impossible to film. As someone said earlier, the Band of Brothers doesn't do it too badly, but Steve says The Odd Angry Shot, which is an Aussie movie, was a good war film. Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. If you like that, Steve, go and check Danger Close, The Battle of Long Tan, which was only made in 2019 and was one of the best recent movies I've seen for ages. And that's the true story of the Australians' biggest battle in Vietnam. And it's actually a very good film. You go and watch that. Dan Busters is a great film. Yeah, Dan Busters is a pretty good film. We were talking about that one earlier in relation to the name of Guy Gibson's dog, which I will not repeat on the stream because it would get me in trouble these days. Yeah, War Horse wasn't bad. I've seen that. That was that First World War film. I don't believe in this nudge unit is saying Fresh Prince implying a pullback from leftist wokeist radicalism. I don't see this happening, I've got to say. If you look at what Hollywood is producing, and not just like feature films, movies, but also like TV series like this utter dross that Amazon are making, pretending to be Tolkien, which it isn't. It's got nothing to do with Tolkien whatsoever. It's just made up crap for the most part, and it's race swapped and gender swapped to hell. I certainly will not be watching that. You look at that. You look at this new Game of Thrones spin-off that they're making, which looks like it's totally feminist bullshit, basically. There's no sign of this stuff stopping that I can see. I mean, I keep seeing people I follow who look at popular culture saying that there's going to be some sort of change, but basically there isn't. Adam in the chat, yeah, 6 Days. I watched that not long ago, actually. That movie about the Iranian embassy. It ain't bad, and the reason it's not bad is it's based on one of the SAS soldiers' accounts of it, and it ain't a bad film, actually. Yes, I agree with that, Adam. So yeah, another good TV series, if you haven't watched it, is go and watch what's it called? Excuse my language. Go and watch Chris Pratt's series. I can't remember what it's called now. Something List. But that's a good TV series, and it isn't woke at all. And that's why it was the most popular TV series that came out in America last year, I believe, or this year, I believe. But yeah, that was good. And I kept expecting it to go woke, and it didn't, much to my surprise. But that was good. I can't remember what it's called now. Something List. But it's pretty good. The dog was the true hero of the Dam Busters. I must admit, when I first saw it when I was a little kid, I was very sad. What happens to the dog without wishing to do any spoil? I actually read Gibson's book years ago, and it's not bad. And Gibson, of course, did not survive the war, but then he was a bit of a nutter in some respects. Let me see how we're going. So yeah, I'm not sure of this Fresh Prince thing that people like IA talk about. We'll do that. Mighty Balzac, remember who dares wins. Yes, sadly I do. Terrible movie. Absolutely terrible. A good movie, by the way, from around that era is The Wild Geese. That's a good film. I actually like that film. In fact, I think I have a hard copy of that from years ago. Gibson, Baron Badger. Gibson died in '44 flying a Mosquito. Yeah, he was doing what do they call it? He was target marking, wasn't he? Something like that. Did anyone see 1917? Yes, I did. And the problem with 1917, well, there's two problems with it. There's a military problem in that what they did in the First World War is if they wanted to get an urgent message to a unit at the front, they didn't send two blokes miles and miles and miles through the trenches. What they did was they flew an aeroplane over and they dropped a message. And the Royal Flying Corps had special brass containers with loads of coloured streamers on the end, so that when they dropped them from the aircraft, the blokes would actually see them and be able to find them, and that's actually what they would have done. But apart from that, of course, if you look at the movie carefully, there's an awful lot of brown people in that film amongst the British soldiers who certainly would not have been there in actual 1917. I mean, yes, Indian troops did fight on the Western Front. Not by 1917, though. Most of them had been shifted to the Middle East by then, and they fought in their own units. They didn't fight alongside. They didn't fight with British soldiers in British units, even though most of their officers were British. So there are problems with 1917. I mean, it's a good film in some respects, but what am I looking at here? Did they have 7-round clips, Adam, in that movie? I don't know why. They should have 5-round clips, 2. Because the rifle took 2 5-round clips, and you could also stick one up the spout, so 11 rounds in total. Marco Coletti Spaghetti. During the war, Andrew, the British did not rape in World War II. Well, I'm quite sure a few people did, probably. But it wasn't the kind of thing that the Russians got up to when they got into Berlin. So, not at all. So there's that. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. Is it true that initially World War I pilots of differing size would wave to each other before they realised? No, not in the Sopwith Camel days. By the time the Sopwith Camel came out, which I think was 1917, it got very ruthless. In 1914, they sometimes waved to each other, partly because most of the airplanes had no armament. They couldn't do anything else. So, news to me that they do, JB. I have no idea. I mean, I could equally ask you, why do Ukrainians shoot prisoners of war in the legs? Or why do they missile strike places where loads of their Nazi dudes are being held? and missile striking and prisoner of war camps, the war crime. You aren't going to find much pro-Ukrainian stuff from me, JB, and you know this. So, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt nations in Europe. It's a center for the sex trade, where young girls are lured into prostitution around different places. And it is the center in the world for the babies for cash trade. So if you're someone like certain celebrity gay guys who want to go and get babies with your gay so-called husband, Ukraine is the place that you would go for that. So there we go. What are we going on? No name. British troops in World War II, the most genteel. Sometimes. Don't take that too far. I mean, I remember like reading years ago, and I was lucky enough to know quite a lot of World War II veterans when I was younger because I'm an old bastard, and I even knew some World War I veterans when I was a teenager. And the British Army were fully capable of attacking an enemy position, and the enemy tried to surrender. But because they left it too late, they'd say, "Too late, chum," and just shoot them. But that will happen with every army. You can't think you're going to fire and kill these dudes' mates until they're like 10 yards away, and then chuck your hands up and say, "Oh yeah, I surrender," and the blokes won't just shoot you in the face, because they will 9 times out of 10. Unsurprisingly. I'm not a big fan of Coach Red Pill, JB, and I am a bit dubious about what may or may not have happened to him. Did you know? Did you and I know? JB, look, I'm not going to turn around and even say what you're saying there, because I don't know that there's any truth in that whatsoever. All right. And I don't know AA well enough to know what he knows and what he thinks. You will sometimes see me in the chat on an AA stream, and that's as far as you will see. But I don't know that what you're saying there is true, JB, and I'm certainly not going to repeat it online, because I suspect, mate, if you're a believer in Wiki, I don't know, mate, because Wiki is such a left-wing platform these days, particularly about anything political. So I'm just not going to take any notes of that, to be honest with you. Like, Wiki is sometimes reasonably reliable about things to do with the military 100 years ago, sometimes. Sorry, that's even not true if it's a war. Equipment. Like, if you want to look up a destroyer or something like that, all right, sometimes Wiki ain't too bad as a starting point. But nothing political on Wiki can be believed at all. It's dominated by lefties. Totally. Where are we? No Name is saying, my granddad was in Monte Cassino in the logistics corps after commanding a tank in Africa, but he did not rape women. Well, yeah, I can well believe that. I don't think most people's dads and granddads raped women. Most of them did not. Of course they didn't. Wonder what sort. JB, if you carry on with this, mate, I will ban you from the chat, because if what you're saying is not accurate, that will get people into big trouble. All right, you want to put it on your own channel, go do it. Don't put it on mine. God's Own Prototype. I wonder what kind of poems Kipling would be writing about the current state of things. Yeah, well, given he wrote Recessional after the Anglo-Boer War in 1902, God knows what he would be writing these days. I don't think it'd be very upbeat. Put it that way. So, yeah. Nudge unit. You're talking about Coach Red Bull. Yeah, I think he's in Kharkov. don't understand people who want to come on my stream in the chat and then cast aspersions on people. I really do not. Yeah, Mighty Balzac, Wikipedia does do that frequently because I use it sometimes, mainly when I'm looking up details of Victorian warships, for which it's not too bad, providing you then go and double check everything. But anything political, absolutely anything political, and it's extremely left wing. And like all sorts of stuff gets changed all the time, and you can't change it back around. They make sure you can't. It's very dominated by the left. Californian Governor Gavin Newsom is gearing up to run for president. I think he's got an almost uncontested path to the White House, providing Biden steps aside. Wow, poor America if that happens. That's all I'd say. Poor America. Americans I know, people like Don the Pleb, would be very upset with that, I suspect. But I'm hoping that Trump or somebody will win. I mean, Trump's not perfect, but he's certainly better than anyone else around at the moment. So, Of course, it depends how honest the election is. But, we will see. I have no idea what that is, dude. Don't know what that is at all. Okay. Well, guys, come on. Questions, or I'm going to pack this in, surely. No name. What's your opinion of the Germans on the Western Front? My great uncle was captured at Dunkirk, spent the rest of the war as Stalag, and was all treated by most standards. Generally speaking, the Germans treated the British, Commonwealth, and American prisoners they captured very well. Or not, that's probably wrong. They treated them in accordance with the Geneva Convention. They didn't do that with the Russians, but they certainly did with the Western prisoners they captured. For the most part. There were massacres of British soldiers by like SS types and what have you. There were, but they were the exception rather than the rule. Is what I think about the Germans on the Western Front. And the British spent a lot of the war fighting Rommel in North Africa, and Rommel was generally a pretty fair-minded and civilized opponent. So, I'm sure that's true. God's own prototype. I totally believe you. I certainly wouldn't give them money because, like I said, they're so left-wing dominated now. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. I'm not going to say what you said there, but I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all, to be honest. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I'm a big Kipling fan. I like Plain Tales from the Hills and what have you. I like Kim as a novel. So yeah. They mostly did. I believe British and American Air Force types were all put in the same things by the Luftwaffe, because the German Air Force ran the prison camps for shot down airmen. And I think the British and Americans and Canadians and Australians and what have you were all put in the same POW camps by those guys. So yes. Yeah, no, Judy, I don't use Telegram for pretty much the same reason. I'm not on Telegram for the same reason. And it's also partly why I'm not on Twitter either. The only things you will find me on are Gab and Minds in terms of social media. And I've got a Discord, but it's non-open Discord. It's a closed Discord by invitation only. And it's mainly for doing streams. But you can see how well that works out this week, because I don't have any guests. So... But yeah, I agree with that about Telegram. I'm not on Telegram, so I never have been. Never been on Twitter. Don't do either of those things, which is a nuisance sometimes when you're trying to get hold of people to do streams and so on. Like I did a stream recently with Andy Nowicki, who's just been banned by YouTube for 12 days off of it. Go and check out his second channel. I did a stream with Andy Nowicki and Red Hawk, and initially getting hold of those guys, I've required other people to give me a hand because of the fact I'm not on Twitter or Telegram or whatever. So it has its disadvantages. What have we got here? The FBI raid was well expected in advance. Trump just took advantage to spin up publicity before officially starting his campaign. Because once he does, different financial rules apply. Yeah, it could well be, mate. Could well be. I know I was asking Don the Pleb this ages ago. Like, did he want DeSantis to run from Florida? And Don was of the opinion that DeSantis is better off staying in Florida than running for president next time. So, we'll see. I don't pretend to be any sort of expert whatsoever on American politics. Have I looked? Yeah, all right. Have you looked much into the works and or streams of Thomas 777, his New Deal World War II streams with Pete Creones? Were fantastic. Tuesday, FA Tuesday, I actually have watched all those streams, and I've watched a few other streams with Thomas 777. He has a good general understanding of the area he's talking about. I don't think his details are always totally correct, let me say. But, it's a vast, big subject. And like, I certainly make mistakes when I'm talking about it. If you're interested in that stuff, Tuesday, FA Tuesday, like I said, 25th of this month, I shall be doing part 2 of my stream with Horace, which is going to be looking at basically British policy 1919 to about 1942, the Washington Naval Treaty, and Winston Churchill. I'm not a big fan of Winston Churchill, by the way, but I don't detest him as much as Thomas 777 does. Like, I certainly wouldn't call him a fat pig, which is what Thomas 777 does. But like I said, Thomas 777 has got a good general understanding of that era, but I do think he makes some mistakes on the details of stuff. Like when he was talking about Hess flying to UK, and Operation Sea Lion, which was the largely fake German thing to invade UK, which was never going to happen. The Germans just didn't have the naval forces to escort the troops. It would have been a utter disaster for the Germans. And everyone knew that. But he was talking about Hess was doing this partly because he didn't want that. He wanted to say that was fake and all the rest of it. But there was no chance of Sea Lion going ahead when Hess flew to UK. It just wasn't going to happen. This was months and months and months after the Battle of Britain and all that stuff. So, yes, that was the show I was thinking of, God's Own Prototype. Yes, The Terminal List is Chris Pratt's show. Very good TV series, and one of the few I've watched recent TV series which is not woke. And basically everyone I know who's watched it said, yeah, I thought it was good. So, there you go. and it's not woke, it's not left wing, it's not feminist. It's pretty good. Where are we? What am I looking at here? Tuesday, FA Tuesday, Winston Churchill, the fat sweaty hog himself. Look, mate, like I said, I'm not a big Churchill fan. Anyone who's followed this channel for a while knows I'm not a big Churchill fan. And if you watch the stream I'm doing with Horace, you will find that out double. I think Churchill was disastrous as a British war leader, frankly. And not just in the Second World War, but in the First World War as well. You're not going to find me defending Churchill. On the other hand, I'm not going to call him a fat, sweaty hog. I mean, he was personally very brave. He took part in one of the last great cavalry charges in British history, Omdurman in 1898. He fought on the northwest frontier in 1897 with Sir Bindon Blood's column in the Malakand, and he also saw action in the Anglo-Boer War. He wasn't a coward. And I've seen people say, including Thomas 77, saying he was, and he was not. Just not true. Like I'm quite happy to criticize people where they deserve it. And Churchill was many things, and he drank too much, for sure he did. But he wasn't a coward. Do I respect him for his drinking capacity? Not particularly, to be honest with you. But then, I was a soldier, and I know and have known lots and lots and lots of people with very, very large drinking capacities. And I am not a complete slouch myself when the fancy takes me. So there we go. But yeah, calling Churchill a coward is just like, it's nonsense. It's not true. He wasn't. That is not to say I don't have many criticisms of him, and particularly his naval and military strategic ideas, which were almost invariably totally wrong. For example, when in World War II, he was sending every spare British tank and modern fighter aircraft to Stalin, who was a scumbag, basically. I have no room for Stalin, whatever. I would have sent all that stuff to the British in the Far East. And, we might not have had the disaster we had in Malaya and Singapore, for example, where the British had no tanks, which meant the really crappy Japanese tanks had a big advantage. And Japanese tanks were terrible. They were even probably worse than Italian tanks. That's saying quite a lot. So, yeah. Steve, enough sobriety, we should have a raging alcoholic leader. To be honest. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, like, if you're going to... My favourite British Prime Minister was probably Lord Salisbury from the 1890s. And whilst he was quite happy to have a drink, I don't think he was any sort of alcoholic. Also, I would point out, because I'm down under, it is 6:55 a.m. down here. I got up at 5:10 in the morning, so I'm drinking coffee like I normally am when I do these streams, because I have to get up very early in the morning to do them because most of my audience is in UK. So there you go. What are we looking at here? Oh, you're talking about Kipling. Fair enough. Yeah. I can't remember that we did a lot of Kipling at school, even when I was at school. I bet nobody does it anymore. I'd be surprised if they even cover him these days. Lumber, yeah, I got up at 5:10 this morning to do the stream. It gets better when Britain goes on to gets rid of daylight saving. I think I can get up at 6, but even then, that's about as late as you get up to do this stream at this time. And I have people who have asked me sometimes to change when I do the streams. But like, this is episode 84. We've been doing this for 84 weeks now. And I am loath to change it because it's the one time that doesn't clash with other people. And I was actually talking to someone today who might be starting a stream up which will clash with this, which will be a pity because it's a history stream that I would actually like to take part in. But we will see what happens, because I like my history. No, I drink real coffee Tuesday, FA Tuesday. I mean, I do occasionally drink instant coffee, but not that Nescafe Gold crap that what's his name drinks. But mostly I drink real coffee, filter coffee. Kids are all reading Ibrahim Kendi and other race garbage in California. Yeah, I can believe that. And it is garbage. I mean, you know, I just find it amusing that people like this Kendi dude, you know, they can live in a Western nation and get well paid and all the rest of it, and we put up with it. It's just crazy to me. I'm trying to remember. We might have done a little Kipling when I was in primary school, which is pre 11 in the UK, pre-age 11. We might have done a little Kipling because some teacher liked it. And like, you know, you're talking, this would have been in the 1970s, for God's sake. So, you know, long time ago. But I'd be very surprised if anyone does it anymore, to be honest. But I'm a big Kipling fan. I think he's an outstanding British 19th century poet and author. And of course, his son was killed in World War I in the Irish Guards. So, yeah. All right, guys, I'm probably going to stop this in a few minutes unless I get any more questions, frankly. As I said, didn't have any guests this week. But unless I get some more questions from the chat, I shall probably play us out the tune and stop this in a minute. Does the land down under produce a decent cigar? I have no idea. Tuesday, FA Tuesday. I smoke cigars once in a blue moon. Something I very, very seldom do. You can certainly get decent cigars down here, but whether they're made in Australia, I have no idea. No idea at all. But I'm a cigarette smoker for the most part. I smoke almost as much as I probably smoke more than Don the Pleb does. Watch Don the Pleb on the stream; he smokes a lot. Steve, what are we doing here? Do they dip tobacco a lot in the British Army? I don't think they do at all, mate. No, I've never seen anyone doing that in the British forces. Smoke a lot. We used to have a captain who, when he was giving us some sort of a lecture, he got into the habit of saying to the blokes, who's going to offer me a smoke? And if we didn't, he wouldn't give us permission to smoke. And he did this about 5 times, and the 6th time he did it, he had about 50 cigarettes chucked at him. He never did it again. In fact, I think a couple of blokes chucked boxes of cigarettes at him. So he stopped that. He thought it wasn't such a good idea. Yeah, Tuesday, you can tell I smoke because of my gravelly ass voice. Why is that? And all the testosterone, of course. You know, I was born in 1965, mate. I don't suffer from all this soy boy stuff that many modern youngsters do. You know. Is it still freezing in Melbourne? No, Mighty Balzac, it's not. It was actually quite nice day today. It is gradually getting into spring down here. Can't happen soon enough as far as I'm concerned, because I hate the winter. There's a reason I sort of moved to South Africa after I left the British Army and then eventually moved to Australia. And part of it was I detest the winter. I just don't like winter at all. You know, people talk, you can go skiing not far from where I am in the winter, but I can't imagine why anyone would want to. It's just not my thing. I don't mind being hot. I hate being freezing cold. Really do. All right, guys, we've done an hour, which I think is probably enough. So I'm going to play us out with a tune. Here we go. Okay, that was Lily Bolero, obviously, and it was a tribute to the 3rd Foot, the Royal West Kent Regiment, known as the Buffs, from their buff-facing colours, on their collar and cuffs. And everyone will have probably heard of the old British Army saying, "Steady the Buffs," because they were certainly one of the oldest and most senior British infantry regiments back in the day when Britain still had infantry regiments. There we go. All right, guys, and that was from Patriotic Archive, by the way, which is a channel I regularly promote on this stream. You go and check him out. Just the same as Chris Gard, who was the dude who did the song for the first the first bit of music I played on here. And we will see you next week, hopefully with some guests this time, for Splendid Isolation 85. And do look out for my Part 2 stream with Horace on the history of Britain, basically between World War I and World War II, kind of. So, yeah. Go off, guys. We will see you then.